The grand hall of Valdoria Palace stood silent as Princess Elena clutched the sealed envelope in her trembling hands. The black wax seal bearing her father's crest remained unbroken, just as King Theodore had instructed before his death 3 months ago. She had waited, as promised, until both her brothers could be present for this moment. Prince Alexander, the elder brother and heir to the throne, sat rigidly in his chair near the fireplace. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his military uniform pressed to perfection, every inch the future king their father had groomed him to be. Beside him, Prince Marcus lounged with calculated casualness, though Elena noticed the tension in his shoulders. The younger prince had always been different from Alexander, more rebellious, more questioning, more willing to challenge tradition. Elena took a deep breath and looked at both her brothers. The afternoon sun streaming through the tall windows cast long shadows across the Persian rug, creating patterns that seemed to dance with her nervousness. She had been only 19 when their father had called her to his bedside during those final days. Now, at 22, she felt the weight of the secret she had carried for 3 long months. "Father gave this to me himself," she began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "He made me promise to wait until we could all be together, until the initial mourning period had passed." Alexander leaned forward, his blue eyes, so like their father's, narrowing slightly. "Why would Father entrust something to you that concerns all of us? Why not Mother, or me as his heir?" The question stung, though Elena had expected it. Alexander had always been protective of his position, perhaps too much so. Their mother, Queen Catherine, had retreated to the summer palace after the funeral, lost in her grief. It had fallen to Elena to hold this burden. "Because," Elena said softly, "Father said I was the only one he could trust to follow his instructions exactly. He said you would understand why after you heard what he had to say." Marcus shifted in his seat, running a hand through his lighter brown hair. "Just open it, Elena. The suspense is killing me." With careful fingers, Elena broke the seal. The wax crumbled away, revealing several pages of their father's distinctive handwriting. She unfolded them slowly, aware that whatever words lay on these pages would change everything. The first page was addressed to all 3 of them. "My beloved children," Elena read aloud, her voice echoing in the vast hall, "if you are reading this, then I am gone, and the time has come for truth. What I am about to reveal will shake the very foundations of everything you believe about our family, our kingdom, and your futures. But truth, no matter how difficult, must prevail." Alexander's jaw tightened. Marcus sat up straighter, his casual demeanor evaporating. Elena continued reading, each word feeling heavier than the last. "For 35 years, I have ruled Valdoria with what I hope was wisdom and justice. But I have also lived with a secret that has haunted me every day of my reign. A secret that involves the true succession of our throne and the real reason I have made the decisions I have regarding each of your futures." Elena paused, looking up at her brothers. Alexander's face had gone pale. Marcus looked confused but intrigued. She turned back to the letter. "Alexander, my firstborn, you have been raised to be king. Every lesson, every preparation, every expectation has been placed upon your shoulders. You have borne this weight with grace and determination, but I must tell you now that you are not my biological son." The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Alexander shot to his feet, his chair scraping against the marble floor. "What?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "That's impossible. Mother would never—" Elena's hands shook as she continued reading. "Your mother and I struggled for years to conceive. The pressure for an heir was immense. The kingdom needed stability. When a young noblewoman came to court, already with child and desperate for help, we made a decision that would forever change our lives. We adopted you in secret, presenting you to the kingdom as our own. Your biological mother died in childbirth, taking her secret with her. Your biological father was a foreign prince who could never acknowledge you without causing a war. Alexander sank back into his chair, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. Marcus reached out to grip his brother's shoulder, but Alexander shrugged him off. "There's more," Elena said gently, though her own world was spinning. She had called Alexander her brother all her life. He had protected her, guided her, been the steady rock their family orbited around. How could this be true? She forced herself to continue reading. "Marcus, you were our miracle. Born 2 years after we adopted Alexander, you were the child we had prayed for. Our biological son. Yet I could not displace Alexander, who had already been presented as my heir. To do so would have destroyed the stability of the kingdom and the boy who had done nothing wrong except be born to the wrong parents." Marcus's face went through a series of expressions: shock, confusion, anger, and something that might have been guilt. "So I should have been—" "No," Elena said firmly, reading her father's next words. "You should have been exactly who you are, Marcus. I made the decision to keep Alexander as my heir, not out of obligation, but out of love and wisdom. He has been trained for this role. He understands the weight of the crown. You, my son, were given the freedom to find your own path, unburdened by the expectations of kingship." She continued reading, her father's voice seeming to echo through his written words. "But the secret goes deeper still. The laws of Valdoria state that only blood descendants can inherit the throne. I have spent years working with the High Council to change these laws, citing the need for adoption rights and modern succession practices. What they did not know was that I was trying to protect Alexander's claim." Alexander stood abruptly and walked to the window, his back to his siblings. His shoulders were rigid with tension, his hands clasped behind his back in that way he had when trying to maintain control. Elena wanted to go to him, but she had to finish reading. "However," the letter continued, "the old laws still stand. The High Council blocked every attempt at reform. Which brings me to my final wish and the true reason for this letter." Elena took a shaky breath. This was the part she had dreaded, the part their father had warned her would change everything. "I wish for Marcus to take the throne as the rightful blood heir of Valdoria." "No." Alexander's voice was firm as he turned from the window. "I won't accept this. I have been heir for 32 years. I have dedicated my life to preparing for this role. Blood or no blood, I am Theodore's son in every way that matters." Marcus stood slowly, his face pale. "Alex, I don't want this. You're the heir. You've always been the heir. Father must have lost his mind in those final days." But Elena shook her head, holding up the letter. "There's more. Please, both of you, let me finish." Both princes fell silent. Though the tension in the room was palpable, Elena could feel it pressing against her like a physical weight. "I know this revelation will cause pain and confusion," she read. "Alexander, you are my son in every way that matters, but the law is the law, and if the truth were to come out after my death, and secrets have a way of surfacing, your reign would be challenged. The kingdom could fall into civil war. I cannot let that be my legacy or yours." "However," Elena continued, her voice growing stronger, "I am not simply casting you aside, my beloved Alexander. My final wish is for a shared crown." Both brothers looked up sharply at this. Elena read on. "The laws of Valdoria do allow for joint rule in extraordinary circumstances. Brothers have ruled together before in our history, though not for many generations. I wish for Marcus to be crowned as law demands, but for Alexander to rule beside him as co-king, equal in power and authority. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena watched her brothers process this information, saw the years of rivalry and difference suddenly cast in a new light. Alexander had always been the responsible one, the perfect heir. Marcus had been the spare, free to pursue his own interests, to travel, to question tradition. Now she understood. Their father had shaped them this way deliberately. "This is insane," Alexander finally said, his voice controlled but tight with emotion. "Joint rule never works. History is littered with brothers who tried to share power and ended up at war." "We're not those brothers," Marcus said quietly, surprising both his siblings. "We've never fought for the crown because it was never a question. You were the heir, I was the spare, and we each found our place. Maybe Father saw something we didn't." Elena cleared her throat, drawing their attention back to the letter. "Father addresses that too," she said, and continued reading. "My sons, you are not the brothers of history who fought for power. Alexander, you have never shown jealousy toward Marcus's freedom. Marcus, you have never shown envy of Alexander's position. You have supported each other, challenged each other, made each other better. The kingdom needs both of your strengths. Alexander brings stability, tradition, and diplomatic skill. Marcus brings innovation, connection to the people, and fresh perspective. Together you can lead Valdoria into a new age. Divided, the kingdom will fracture as surely as this secret would fracture your brotherhood if handled poorly." Elena looked up to see tears in Alexander's eyes, though his face remained composed. It was Marcus who moved first, crossing to his brother and placing a hand on his shoulder. This time, Alexander didn't shrug it off. "He's right about one thing," Marcus said softly. "If this secret came out with you on the throne alone, there would be challenges. The noble houses who have always resented our family's power would use it as an excuse for rebellion. But if we present a united front, if we show that the royal family stands together regardless of blood, it could work," Alexander finished, his strategic mind already turning despite the emotional blow. "Joint coronation, equal authority, decisions made together." He turned to look at Marcus directly. "But could you do it? Could you take on the weight of the crown when you've spent your whole life avoiding it?" Marcus met his gaze steadily. "If it means protecting this kingdom and keeping our family together, yes. But only if we do it as true equals. Not king and advisor, not senior and junior ruler. Brothers and co-kings." Elena felt tears sliding down her cheeks as she watched her brothers, for they would always be her brothers, blood or not, begin to navigate this new reality. But there were still pages left in the letter, and she sensed her father had more revelations to share. "There's more," she said softly, and both men turned back to her. "Father has instructions for how to handle the announcement, the legal framework, and—" She paused, scanning ahead. "There's something about the High Council." She read on. "The High Council will resist this arrangement. Lord Pemberton in particular has long suspected the truth about Alexander's parentage. His father was at court when we adopted you, though he had no proof. He will use this as an opportunity to push his own agenda. You must move quickly and decisively." The letter went on to detail political strategies, legal precedents, and specific allies they could count on. Elena watched her brothers unconsciously move closer together as she read, their shared challenge beginning to unite them in a way years of separate paths had not. "There is one more thing," Elena read, nearing the end of the letter. "Elena, my darling daughter, you have a role to play in this as well. As the only one who carries no threat to either of your brother's claims, you must be the bridge between them. You must help them remember that they are brothers first, kings second. The burden I place on you is different, but no less heavy than theirs." She looked up to find both her brothers watching her with new understanding. She had always been the peacemaker in the family, the one who smoothed over conflicts and brought them together for holidays and celebrations. Now she understood why her father had chosen her for this task. The final page of the letter was more personal, filled with their father's love and hopes for each of them. As Elena read these words, she could almost hear his voice, could almost feel his presence in the room with them. "My children, I do not ask for your forgiveness, only for your understanding. Every choice I made was out of love. Love for Alexander, who became my son in every way that mattered. Love for Marcus, who deserved the chance to choose his own path. Love for Elena, who has the strength to hold this family together. And love for Valdoria, which needs all of you to face the challenges ahead. Be better than the kings who came before. Rule with wisdom and compassion, but above all, rule together. Let the world see that blood alone does not make a family or a kingdom. Let them see that chosen bonds can be just as strong, that brothers need not be rivals, that a kingdom can be united not by one vision, but by shared purpose. All my love, always your father." Elena set down the letter with shaking hands. The three siblings sat in silence for long moments, each processing the earthquake that had just shaken their world. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Finally, Alexander spoke. "He's gone. We can't ask him why he kept this secret so long, why he didn't tell me years ago, why he chose this path." His voice was steady, but filled with pain. "Would it have changed anything?" Marcus asked. "If you'd known when you were 20 or 15 or 10, would you have prepared any less diligently? Would you have been any less his son?" Alexander considered this, then slowly shook his head. "No, I suppose not. But the lie still burns." "It wasn't a lie," Elena said firmly. "You are his son. You're our brother. The how of it doesn't change the what of it." Alexander looked at her, and for the first time since she'd started reading, he smiled. A small, sad smile, but genuine. "When did my little sister become so wise?" "When father told her she'd need to be," Elena replied, managing a watery smile of her own. Marcus stood and walked to the side table where a decanter of brandy waited. He poured 3 glasses and handed them to his siblings. "To father," he said, raising his glass, "who managed to shock us even from beyond the grave." "To father," Alexander echoed, "who loved us enough to give us the truth, even when it hurt." "To father," Elena added, "who saw the future more clearly than any of us." They drank, the brandy burning away some of the shock and confusion. Then Alexander set down his glass and turned to Marcus with an extended hand. "Co-kings?" he asked, his voice formal but his eyes warm. Marcus gripped his hand firmly. "Co-kings, though God help us both, I haven't the faintest idea how to be a king." "Lucky for you," Alexander said with a hint of his old humor. "I've been training for the job my whole life, though apparently for all the wrong reasons." "Not wrong," Elena interjected. "Just incomplete. Father knew the kingdom would need both of you. He just took the long way around to making it happen." As the 3 siblings began to discuss the practical implications of their father's revelation and final wish, Elena couldn't help but marvel at how quickly they had begun to adapt. The shock was still there, might always be there, but underneath it was the foundation their father had built. A genuine love and respect between brothers who had never truly competed because they'd never been allowed to occupy the same space. Now they would have to learn to rule together, to balance their different strengths and perspectives, to present a united front to a kingdom that would be just as shocked by this development as they had been. It would not be easy. The High Council would challenge them. Noble houses would scheme. Foreign powers would test the stability of this new arrangement. But as Elena watched her brothers begin to plan, She saw what their father must have seen. Two men who complemented each other perfectly, who could achieve together what neither could accomplish alone. Alexander's steadiness tempering Marcus's innovation. Marcus's connection to the common people balancing Alexander's relationships with the nobility. Two halves of what could be a truly great reign. The candles in the great hall had been lit as darkness fell, casting dancing shadows on the walls. In those shadows, Elena could almost see their father's approving smile. He had kept this secret for over 30 years, carried the weight of it through every day of his reign, all to bring them to this moment. As she listened to her brothers debate their first moves, how to approach the High Council, how to announce the joint rule, how to handle Lord Pemberton's inevitable opposition, Elena realized that their father's final wish wasn't just about succession or bloodlines or even the stability of the kingdom. It was about showing them that they were stronger together than apart, that the bonds of chosen family could be just as powerful as those of blood, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is telling a difficult truth at just the right moment. The night stretched ahead of them, full of challenges and uncertainties. But for now, in this room where so many kings had made so many momentous decisions, three siblings faced their future together. And despite everything, or perhaps because of it, Elena felt hope. Their father's final wish would not be easy to fulfill. But then, King Theodore had never chosen the easy path when the right one was available. And neither would his children. As the discussion continued late into the night, plans taking shape and strategies forming, Elena silently made her own vow. She would be the bridge her father had asked her to be. She would help her brothers navigate this unprecedented path, and she would ensure that King Theodore's legacy lived on, not in the blood that ran through their veins, but in the love that bound them together, and the kingdom they would build with that love as its foundation. The morning after Princess Elena's revelation dawned gray and misty over the kingdom of Valdoria. In the palace, three siblings who had barely slept prepared to face the High Council with news that would shake the very foundations of the monarchy. Prince Alexander stood before his mirror, adjusting his ceremonial uniform with the same precision he had shown every day of his life, but his reflection seemed somehow different now. The face of a man who had discovered he was not who he thought he was. In the adjacent chamber, Prince Marcus paced restlessly. He had never wanted the crown, had spent years cultivating the image of the carefree younger son. Now he found himself thrust into a role he had never prepared for. Expected to rule alongside a brother who had every reason to resent him. His casual clothes had been replaced with formal attire that felt like armor he didn't know how to wear. Princess Elena moved between her brother's chambers, carrying messages and offering reassurance. She had spent the night researching historical precedents for joint rule, finding examples both successful and catastrophic. The difference, she noted, usually came down to trust between the rulers. She prayed her brothers had enough of that to see them through. Lord Pemberton arrived at the palace earlier than expected, his calculating eyes taking in every detail as he was escorted to the council chamber. He was a man who collected secrets like currency, and Elena suspected he had come early to gauge the atmosphere, to see if the royal siblings betrayed any unusual tension. Behind him came the other members of the High Council, Lord Ashworth, ancient but sharp, Lady Margaret Stonehaven, the kingdom's finest legal mind, General Morrison, Alexander's mentor in military matters, and Bishop Caldwell, representative of the church. The great council chamber had been prepared according to tradition. The long table of polished oak gleamed in the morning light, with chairs precisely placed for each member. At the head of the table sat two chairs, instead of the usual one, a detail that did not escape Lord Pemberton's notice. An interesting arrangement, he murmured to Lady Stonehaven as they took their seats. One wonders what prompted such a change. Lady Stonehaven, Her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, merely raised an eyebrow. Perhaps we are about to find out. When the royal siblings entered together, the council rose according to protocol. Alexander and Marcus moved to stand behind the two chairs at the head of the table, while Elena took a seat to the side, a thick folder of documents before her. The brothers remained standing, neither willing to sit first in what would be their initial test of shared authority. "Members of the High Council," Alexander began, his voice carrying the authority of years of training, "we have called you here to share King Theodore's final wishes regarding the succession and future governance of Valdoria." "The succession is already clear," Lord Pemberton interrupted smoothly. "You are the heir, Your Highness. Has something changed?" Elena watched Alexander's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. Her eldest brother had insisted on beginning the meeting himself, on maintaining control of the narrative. She saw now the wisdom in their father's choice. Alexander's years of preparation gave him the presence to handle even this. "Everything has changed," Alexander replied calmly. "And yet nothing has changed. The kingdom will be ruled by King Theodore's sons, as he wished. Princess Elena, please share our father's letter with the council." Elena rose and began distributing copies of the letter, carefully edited to include only the portions relevant to the succession. They had debated through the night about how much to reveal, finally agreeing that the full truth was necessary to prevent future challenges. The council chamber fell silent as the members read. Elena watched their faces change, Lord Ashworth's weathered features showing surprise, General Morrison's expression growing thunderous, Lady Stonehaven's sharp eyes racing through the legal implications. Bishop Caldwell crossed himself. Lord Pemberton's face showed no surprise at all, only a calculating satisfaction that made Elena's stomach turn. "So," Lord Pemberton said softly when the reading was complete, "the rumors were true after all. Our crown prince is not of royal blood. He is my father's son in every way that matters." Marcus spoke for the first time, his voice firm. "And he will be my co-king, as our father wished." General Morrison slammed his hand on the table. "This is preposterous. I trained that boy myself. I watched him grow into the finest heir this kingdom has seen in generations. I don't care whose blood runs in his veins. Alexander is the rightful king." "The law cares," Lady Stonehaven said quietly. "The succession acts are quite clear. Only those of royal blood may inherit the throne. If Prince Alexander is not King Theodore's biological son, then he cannot rule alone," Lord Pemberton finished, with barely concealed satisfaction. "The law is absolute on this matter." "Which is why," Alexander said, maintaining his composure despite the blow, "King Theodore proposed joint rule. Prince Marcus, as the blood heir, will be crowned. I will rule beside him as co-king. The legal precedent exists. Kings Aldrich and Roderick ruled jointly for 40 years during the War of the Three Kingdoms." "That was 500 years ago," Lord Ashworth pointed out, though not unkindly, "and they were twins, raised from birth to share everything. You and Prince Marcus have lived very different lives." "Different strengths for different challenges," Marcus responded. "My brother brings diplomatic skill, military knowledge, and years of preparation. I bring connections to the merchant class, understanding of the common people's needs, and fresh perspectives on old problems. Together, we can serve Valdoria better than either could alone." Lord Pemberton leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "And if you disagree? What happens when the co-kings cannot reach consensus? Who has the final say?" "We will reach consensus," Alexander stated firmly. "As we did last night, as we have this morning, as we will continue to do." "Pretty words," Lord Pemberton sneered. "But power shared is power halved. The noble houses will not accept this arrangement. There will be those who say Prince Alexander should step aside entirely, that a bastard has no place on the throne, shared or otherwise." The word hung in the air like a slap. General Morrison half rose from his chair, but Alexander gestured for him to remain seated. "You forget yourself, Lord Pemberton," Alexander said coldly. "I am still your prince, and you will show proper respect." "For now," Lord Pemberton replied. "But what about next week, when word of this spreads? What about next month, when the noble houses convene? What about next year, when foreign powers test our borders, wondering if 2 kings means a divided kingdom?" "Then they will learn otherwise," Marcus said, moving to stand shoulder to shoulder with his brother. "Lord Pemberton, you seem very eager to see conflict where King Theodore saw strength. One wonders what you gain from such division." Elena saw the flash of anger in Pemberton's eyes before he smoothed his expression. "I gain nothing, Your Highness. I merely point out the challenges you will face. The kingdom requires stability, not experimentation. The kingdom requires leadership," Bishop Caldwell interjected, speaking for the first time. "And in my years of watching these young men grow, I have seen in them both the qualities of good kings. Perhaps the Almighty's hand is in this. 2 brothers, different in gifts, but united in purpose." "The Church supports the arrangement?" Lady Stonehaven asked, her legal mind already working through the implications. "The Church supports the rightful succession according to law and conscience," the bishop replied carefully. "If the law allows for joint rule and both princes are willing, then who are we to stand against King Theodore's final wish?" General Morrison had been silent since his outburst, but now he spoke again, his voice gruff with emotion. "I've served this kingdom for 40 years. I've trained 3 generations of princes. Alexander is the finest of them all, blood or no blood." He turned to Marcus. "But you, Your Highness, have qualities your brother lacks. You see the kingdom from the ground up, not just from the palace down. Maybe the old king knew what he was doing after all." Elena felt a surge of hope. If they could win over the general, others would follow. But Lord Pemberton was not finished. "Fine words from fine people," he said silkily. "But what of the practicalities? How will decisions be made? Who commands the military? Who treats with foreign powers? Who holds the final seal of authority? These are not trivial matters to be decided by brotherly affection." Elena opened her folder and withdrew a document. "King Theodore anticipated these concerns," she said. "We have drafted a formal agreement outlining the structure of joint rule, based on historical precedent, but adapted for modern needs." She began reading key points. "Military command will be shared, with Prince Alexander leading strategic planning and Prince Marcus overseeing recruitment and soldier welfare. Foreign policy will be developed jointly, with both kings present for all major negotiations. The royal seal will be redesigned to require both signatures for laws and decrees." The list continued, detailed and comprehensive. Elena watched the council members' expressions shift from skepticism to consideration. Even Lord Pemberton seemed momentarily taken aback by the thoroughness of the proposal. "You've thought of everything," Lady Stonehaven murmured, reviewing her copy of the document. "Joint ceremonies, shared residences, even protocols for public appearances. This isn't a hasty decision." "Our father spent years preparing for this possibility," Alexander admitted. "We found additional documents in his private study. He had been working with constitutional scholars in secret, preparing frameworks, studying other kingdoms with shared power structures. All while letting everyone believe Alexander would rule alone," Lord Ashworth said slowly. "Why the deception?" "Because," Marcus said, "he needed Alexander to be fully prepared to rule, and he needed me to develop different skills. If we had known from the beginning, would we have become the men we are today? Would Alexander have worked so hard if he knew his claim might be challenged? Would I have connected with merchants and commoners if I thought I'd wear a crown?" The wisdom of King Theodore's long game was becoming apparent even to the skeptics. He had shaped two sons for two different aspects of kingship, then brought them together at the moment when both were ready. "There remains the matter of the noble houses," Lord Pemberton persisted. "Lord Blackwood has two sons. He might see this as an opportunity to advance his own claims. Lady Rosehaven has always believed her family's connection to the old royal line was stronger than yours. They will challenge this arrangement." "Then we will face those challenges together," Alexander said firmly, "united as our father wished." "We propose a trial period," Marcus added, surprising everyone, including his siblings. Elena saw Alexander's quick glance of appreciation. His brother was already showing political acumen. 6 months of joint rule. Let the kingdoms see how we work together. Let the noble houses observe our unity. Let foreign powers understand that 2 kings means twice the strength, not half." "And if it fails," Lord Pemberton pressed, "then the council may reconvene to discuss alternatives," Marcus conceded. "But it will not fail." The council members exchanged glances. Lady Stonehaven was already making notes, her legal mind working through the constitutional implications. General Morrison nodded slowly, his loyalty to Alexander extending to support his chosen path. Bishop Caldwell seemed at peace with the arrangement, seeing divine providence where others saw only complication. Lord Ashworth, the eldest and most traditional of them, surprised everyone by speaking next. "In my years, I have seen kingdoms rise and fall. Usually they fall because of rigidity, an inability to adapt to changing times. Perhaps this is the adaptation Valdoria needs." He looked at both princes. "You have my support, provisional though it may be." That left Lord Pemberton increasingly isolated. He seemed to realize this, his calculating gaze moving between the brothers. "And what role does Princess Elena play in this new arrangement? Is she to be the eternal mediator between kings?" Elena spoke for herself. "I will serve the kingdom as I always have, as advisor, diplomat, and yes, when needed, as mediator. My brothers trust me to speak truth to them both, to see clearly when they cannot. It is a role I accept gladly." "How touching," Lord Pemberton said dryly. "The royal family united against all opposition. But mark my words, this arrangement will be tested. There are those who will see weakness where you see strength, division where you see unity." "Then they will learn otherwise," Alexander and Marcus said in unison, their spontaneous synchronization drawing surprised looks from the council. The debate continued for hours. Legal precedents were examined, practical concerns addressed, and contingency plans discussed. Through it all, Elena watched her brothers work in growing harmony. When Alexander became too rigid, Marcus would interject with flexibility. When Marcus grew too idealistic, Alexander would ground them in reality. They were learning to balance each other even as they spoke. Finally, as the sun reached its zenith, Lady Stonehaven called for a formal vote. "All in favor of accepting King Theodore's final wish for joint rule between Prince Alexander and Prince Marcus?" General Morrison's hand rose first, followed by Bishop Caldwell. Lord Ashworth added his weathered hand to the count. Lady Stonehaven herself raised her hand with a slight smile. 4 votes in favor. Only Lord Pemberton abstained, his expression unreadable. "The motion passes," Lady Stonehaven announced. "May I be the first to say, long live the kings." The plural form sounded strange, but as the other council members echoed it, Elena felt the reality settling in. Her brothers would rule together. The first challenge had been met. As the council members filed out, Lord Pemberton lingered. He approached the 3 siblings with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You've won this round," he said quietly. "But the game is far from over. Lord Blackwood is already gathering support among the eastern nobles. Lady Rosehaven has been corresponding with the southern houses. Your joint coronation will be interesting. We look forward to it," Marcus replied with equal quiet menace. And Lord Pemberton? My father suspected you knew the truth about Alexander's parentage. He also suspected you've been waiting for the right moment to use that knowledge. Consider carefully whether opposing us is worth whatever gain you seek. Pemberton's smile grew colder. Your Highnesses credit me with more scheming than I deserve. I am merely a servant of the kingdom, ensuring its stability. Then serve by supporting unity rather than fostering division, Alexander suggested. My father kept detailed records of every council meeting, every private conversation. We've only begun to review them. Who knows what other secrets might come to light? The threat was subtle, but clear. Pemberton bowed stiffly and departed, his steps echoing through the chamber. When they were alone, the three siblings finally allowed their exhaustion to show. Marcus slumped in his chair while Alexander loosened his collar. Elena poured water for them all, her hands only slightly trembling. That went better than expected, she said. Pemberton will cause trouble, Alexander warned. He's too ambitious to accept this easily. Let him try, Marcus said with newfound confidence. We have the council's support, the church's blessing, and the law on our side. More importantly, we have each other. Alexander studied his younger brother. You did well in there. Your proposal for a trial period was brilliant. It gives the doubters time to adjust while showing confidence in our success. I learned from watching you, Marcus admitted. All those years of seeing you navigate council politics weren't wasted, even if I pretended not to care. Elena smiled at the growing warmth between them. The crisis had forced them to truly see each other for the first time, not as heir and spare, but as equals with complementary strengths. We need to prepare for the coronation, she said practically. It's in 3 weeks. We'll need new ceremonies, new oaths, new regalia, and a united front against whatever Pemberton and his allies are planning, Alexander added. He turned to Marcus. We should meet with the military commanders together, show them our unity from the start, and the trade guilds, they respect you. If we can secure their support early, Marcus nodded, already thinking ahead. I'll arrange meetings with the merchant council. They've always felt overlooked by the nobility. If we can promise them a voice in the new reign. As her brothers planned, Elena felt a mixture of pride and concern. They were adapting remarkably well to their new reality, but she knew the real tests were still to come. The coronation would be crucial. Any sign of discord between them would be seized upon by their opponents. Over the following days, the palace transformed into a hub of frantic activity. Seamstresses worked around the clock to create matching coronation robes that somehow reflected each king's distinct personality. The royal jewelers crafted 2 crowns of equal magnificence. Protocol officers rewrote centuries of tradition to accommodate 2 monarchs. Elena threw herself into managing these preparations, while her brothers met with various factions of the kingdom. She watched with growing admiration as they developed their own rhythms of cooperation. Alexander would take the lead in military meetings, with Marcus observing and occasionally offering insights about soldier morale. Marcus led discussions with trade representatives, while Alexander absorbed information about economic matters he had previously delegated to advisors. But it was in their private moments that Elena saw the true bond forming. Late one evening, she found them in their father's study, sharing a bottle of wine and speaking quietly about their fears. What if Pemberton's right, Marcus was saying. What if we can't make this work? What if the kingdom suffers because of our arrangement? Then we'll adjust, Alexander replied simply. Father believed in us. Elena believes in us. More importantly, I'm beginning to believe in us. Even knowing I'm the true heir? Marcus asked, the words clearly difficult. Alexander was quiet for a moment. You know what I realized today? When General Morrison was showing us the new deployment plans, I wasn't thinking about bloodlines or legitimacy. I was thinking about how your suggestion to rotate garrison duties would improve morale. I was seeing you as my partner, not my replacement. I never wanted to replace you, Marcus said firmly. Even now, knowing the truth, I see you as the elder brother who protected me, guided me, and sometimes infuriated me with your perfectionism. Both men laughed, the sound lifting Elena's heart. She cleared her throat, making her presence known. Sorry to interrupt, but Lord Blackwood has requested an audience tomorrow. He's bringing his sons. The brothers exchanged glances. The first real test, Alexander murmured. We'll face him together, Marcus decided. Let him see from the start that we cannot be divided. The meeting with Lord Blackwood proved to be everything they had anticipated. The ambitious lord arrived with his two sons, both of military age and bearing. He spent the first portion of the audience offering false congratulations on their unusual arrangement, while his eyes assessed them for weakness. Such a progressive interpretation of succession law, Blackwood mused. Of course, some might argue that if bloodline is so crucial, perhaps we should examine all claims to the throne. My family's connection to the royal line through Queen Elizabetta is through a third daughter of a second son, if memory serves, Alexander interrupted smoothly, whereas Marcus is the direct son of the reigning king. The law is quite clear on the strength of claims, and I choose to share my authority with my brother, Marcus added, as is also within the law. Your family's distant connection gives you no grounds to challenge this arrangement, Lord Blackwood. Blackwood's smile tightened. Of course not, Your Highnesses. I merely point out that tradition is being creatively interpreted. One hopes such creativity doesn't extend to other areas of governance. On the contrary, Alexander said, we intend to honor all traditions that serve the kingdom while adapting those that have outlived their usefulness. For instance, the tradition of noble families contributing their fair share of taxes rather than finding creative exemptions. The threat was clear. Blackwood had been notorious for avoiding taxation through legal loopholes. The prospect of two kings scrutinizing such arrangements clearly unsettled him. We should also discuss the eastern border fortifications, Marcus added casually. I believe your lands would benefit greatly from the new garrison we're planning. Of course, such protection requires cooperation from local lords. Elena hid her smile. Her brothers were learning to work as a team, using their combined knowledge to outmaneuver opponents. Blackwood left the meeting with his ambitions checked and his sons looking thoughtful rather than predatory. Similar meetings followed with other potential challengers. Lady Rosehaven arrived expecting to play the brothers against each other, only to find them presenting a seamlessly united front. The merchant guilds, initially skeptical, left their audiences excited about the prospect of a king who understood commerce paired with one who commanded respect from the nobility. But it was the common people's reaction that surprised everyone. Word of the joint kingship spread through the capital like wildfire. Rather than confusion or concern, there was curiosity and even excitement. Marcus's years of walking among them had built genuine affection, while Alexander's reputation for justice and strength commanded respect. The idea of both men ruling together seemed to offer the best of both worlds. Street performers began crafting plays about the two princes who would be kings. Merchants sold commemorative tokens with both faces. Children played games of two kings, negotiating solutions to playground disputes. Father would have loved this, Elena observed one evening as they watched the city from a palace balcony. Festival lights twinkled in preparation for the coronation, and the sound of celebration drifted up to them. He planned for it, Alexander said quietly. Every step, every decision, leading to this moment. The coronation is in 5 days, Marcus reminded them. Pemberton hasn't made his move yet. That worries me. Elena shared his concern. The Lord had been surprisingly quiet since the council meeting, attending required functions but offering no public support or opposition. His silence felt like the calm before a storm. 3 nights before the coronation, Their fears were realized. Elena was reviewing final ceremony details when a messenger arrived, bearing the seal of the High Council. Her blood ran cold as she read the summons. An emergency session had been called to address new information regarding the succession. She found her brothers in the military planning room, going over security arrangements for the coronation. Their faces went grim as she shared the news. "Pemberton," Marcus said flatly. "He's making his move." "But the council already voted," Alexander protested. "What new information could possibly—" He stopped, his face paling. "Unless he's found something about my biological parents. Something that would make even adoption invalid." Elena gripped his hand. "Whatever it is, we face it together. We've come too far to let Pemberton destroy everything now." The emergency council session was set for the following morning. As the three siblings prepared for what could be their greatest challenge yet, Elena thought of their father's letter, of his faith in their ability to unite against any threat. She prayed that faith had not been misplaced. The great hall clock chimed midnight as they finalized their strategy. In 2 days, they would either celebrate a historic joint coronation or face the complete destruction of their father's final wish. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Alexander said, placing his hands on his siblings' shoulders, "know that you are my true family, blood or no blood, crown or no crown." "Brothers and sister," Marcus agreed, "against whatever comes." "Against whatever comes," Elena echoed, even as she wondered what new weapon Pemberton had found to use against them. The answer would come with dawn, and with it, perhaps the ultimate test of whether two kings could truly rule as one. As they retired to restless sleep, each sibling held tight to the bonds they had forged in crisis, knowing those bonds would be tested as never before when the sun rose on their uncertain future. Dawn broke blood red over Valdoria on the morning of the emergency council session. Princess Elena had not slept, instead spending the night in the royal archives, searching for any document that might give them an advantage against whatever Lord Pemberton had discovered. Her brothers had done the same, Alexander reviewing legal texts, while Marcus gathered intelligence from his network of contacts throughout the city. They met in the pre-dawn darkness to compare findings. Alexander looked haggard but determined, his usually perfect appearance showing signs of the strain. Marcus paced like a caged lion, his nervous energy filling the small study where they had gathered. "My sources in the merchant quarters say Pemberton met with a foreign diplomat 3 nights ago," Marcus reported. "A woman from the Kingdom of Astoria, traveling under a false name. She left the city immediately after their meeting." Alexander's face darkened. "Astoria. My biological father was supposedly an Astorian prince." He turned to Elena. "What did you find in the archives?" Elena spread several documents on the table. "Father was thorough in his records. The woman who gave birth to you was named Lady Celeste Waverly. She came to court in the winter of your birth year, already heavily pregnant. Father's notes say she claimed the child's father was Prince Demon of Astoria, King Aldwin's younger brother." "Demon died in a hunting accident 30 years ago," Marcus said slowly, "which means he can't confirm or deny the claim." "Convenient," Alexander said bitterly. "So what new information could Pemberton have found? A supposed Astorian connection isn't enough to invalidate the adoption." Elena held up another document, her hand trembling slightly. "Unless Prince Demon was already married when you were conceived, under Valdorian law, children born of adultery cannot be legitimized through adoption if the adultery involved betrayal of a royal marriage alliance." The brothers exchanged grim looks. This was the kind of technicality Pemberton would exploit, an obscure law that could unravel everything. "We need to be prepared for anything," Alexander said finally. "If Pemberton has proof of such a marriage, we need counter-arguments ready." As the sun climbed higher, the three siblings made their way to the council chamber. The corridors were unusually crowded with courtiers and servants, all eager for gossip about the emergency session. Elena noticed how they bowed to both brothers equally now, the precedent of joint rule already taking hold in small ways. The council chamber doors were guarded more heavily than usual. Inside, they found the other council members already assembled. General Morrison looked thunderous, clearly displeased at being summoned so dramatically. Lady Stonehaven appeared calm but alert, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Bishop Caldwell seemed to be praying silently. Lord Ashworth sat with his eyes closed, conserving his energy. Lord Pemberton stood at the far end of the chamber, a leather portfolio before him and a satisfied smile on his face. Beside him stood a woman in traveling clothes, her face partially hidden by a hooded cloak. "Now that we are all assembled," Pemberton began without preamble, "I must share information that has recently come to my attention. Information that fundamentally changes the situation regarding our supposed joint kingship." "Get on with it, Pemberton," General Morrison growled. "Some of us have actual work to do preparing for a coronation." "Ah, but that's just it, General," Pemberton said smoothly. "There may not need to be a coronation at all, at least not the one currently planned." He opened his portfolio and withdrew a document bearing official Astorian seals. "This is a marriage certificate, authenticated by the Astorian Royal Archives. It shows that Prince Demon of Astoria was indeed married to Duchess Leanna of Morvale 2 years before Prince Alexander's conception." The chamber fell silent. Elena felt her heart sink, even as she watched her brothers' faces remain carefully composed. "Furthermore," Pemberton continued, clearly enjoying the moment, "I have here a letter from the current King of Astoria, acknowledging that if Prince Alexander is indeed Demon's son, he was born of an adulterous union that violated a formal marriage alliance. Under Section 7 of our own legitimacy laws, this makes Alexander ineligible for adoption into the royal line." He slid the documents across the table with theatrical precision. Lady Stonehaven immediately began examining them, her expression growing more concerned with each line she read. "This woman," Pemberton gestured to his companion, "is Lady Meredith Crane, a historian from the Astorian court. She can verify the authenticity of these documents and provide additional context about Prince Demon's marriage." The woman pushed back her hood, revealing a sharp-featured face and intelligent eyes. She looked uncomfortable but determined as she began to speak in accented Valdorian. "Prince Demon's marriage to Duchess Leanna was arranged to secure the northern passes between our kingdoms. When he died, the alliance crumbled, leading to 10 years of border skirmishes. The suggestion that he fathered a child outside this marriage, potentially with a Valdorian noblewoman, would have been seen as an act of betrayal by both kingdoms." "Ancient history," Marcus said dismissively. "Whatever happened 33 years ago between dead nobles has no bearing on my brother's worthiness to rule." "The law says otherwise," Pemberton countered. "Lady Stonehaven, you are our legal expert. What is your interpretation?" Lady Stonehaven looked up from the documents, her expression troubled. "If these documents are genuine, and if Prince Alexander is indeed Prince Demon's son, born during his marriage to Duchess Leanna, then technically, the law would consider him illegitimate in a way that prevents royal adoption." "Technically," Alexander repeated, his voice dangerously quiet, "you would destroy everything my father built, everything we've worked toward, on a technicality?" "I would uphold the law," Pemberton said sanctimoniously. "The same law that governs us all, from the highest king to the lowest commoner, unless," he paused dramatically, "we consider alternative arrangements." Elena's eyes narrowed. Here it comes, she thought, the real reason for this theatrical display. "What alternative?" Marcus asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. "Prince Marcus is the undisputed blood heir," Pemberton said. "He should rule alone as tradition dictates. Prince Alexander, while unable to be king, could serve the realm in other capacities. Lord Commander of the Royal Forces, perhaps, or ambassador to our Eastern allies. Honored positions that recognize his training and dedication without violating our sacred laws. And who would advise King Marcus in matters of governance? Alexander asked coldly. Who would help fill the gaps in his preparation for rule? You, perhaps, Lord Pemberton? Pemberton's smile widened. I live to serve the crown, Your Highness. If King Marcus required experienced counsel during his early reign, I would humbly offer my assistance. The naked ambition in his words was clear to everyone present. This had never been about the law or legitimacy. It was about Pemberton's desire for power, his vision of himself as the power behind a young, inexperienced king. Elena stood slowly, drawing all eyes to her. Before we proceed with discussions of alternatives, perhaps we should examine these documents more closely. Lady Crane, you say you're a historian. What exactly is your specialty? The Astorian woman shifted slightly. Medieval marriage alliances and their political implications. How fascinating, Elena said pleasantly. And how long have you been studying Prince Daemon's marriage specifically? Several years. It was a significant alliance that shaped both our kingdoms' histories. Indeed. Then surely you can tell us the name of Duchess Lyanna's father? Lady Crane blinked. Duke Aldrich of Morvale, of course. And her mother? Lady Catherine, I believe. Elena smiled coldly. Incorrect. Duchess Lyanna's mother was Lady Margaret of House Fairwind, a detail any serious historian of that period would know instantly. She turned to the council. I spent last night reviewing every record of Astorian nobility in our archives. Lady Meredith Crane appears in none of them. The woman's composed facade cracked slightly. Lord Pemberton intervened quickly. A minor detail. The documents themselves were conveniently discovered just days before the coronation, Marcus interrupted, rising to stand beside his sister. By a historian who doesn't know basic facts about her supposed subject, authenticated by seals that, while impressive, could be forged by any skilled craftsman. You dare suggest, Pemberton began, but Alexander cut him off. I dare suggest nothing. I state plainly that you have attempted to perpetrate a fraud upon this council. These documents are forgeries, your historian is an impostor, and your entire scheme is built on lies and ambition. General Morrison stood abruptly. By God, Pemberton, if you've brought false evidence before this council, prove they're false, Pemberton snarled, his composure finally cracking. You have only suspicions and clever words. The documents bear official seals. Actually, a new voice spoke from the doorway. We can prove they're false quite easily. Everyone turned to see Bishop Caldwell's assistant, Brother Francis, entering with an elderly man in Astorian court dress. The old man walked with difficulty, but his eyes were sharp and clear. Lord Pemberton, Bishop Caldwell said mildly, when you announced this emergency session, I took the liberty of sending a fast rider to the Astorian embassy. Amazing how quickly one can travel when properly motivated. This is Lord Garrett Thorne, the Astorian ambassador to Valdoria. He carries something I think the council should see. Lord Thorne bowed creakily to the royal siblings before producing a letter bearing the personal seal of the King of Astoria. When your messenger explained the situation, Bishop, I immediately contacted my king through our diplomatic channels. His Majesty was most disturbed to hear that someone was forging Astorian royal documents. He handed the letter to Lady Stonehaven, who read it aloud. To the High Council of Valdoria, I, King Aldwin of Astoria, do hereby swear that no marriage certificate between Prince Daemon and Duchess Lyanna exists in our royal archives, as no such marriage ever took place. Prince Daemon died unmarried and without legitimate issue. Any documents suggesting otherwise are forgeries that insult both our kingdoms. Furthermore, we have no historian named Lady Meredith Crane in our employ." The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes turned to Lord Pemberton, whose face had gone from red to white to an unhealthy gray. The woman beside him tried to edge toward the door, only to find her path blocked by palace guards who had quietly entered during the letter reading. "Lord Pemberton," Lady Stonehaven said in a voice like ice, "presenting forged documents to the High Council is high treason. You have attempted to subvert the rightful succession through fraud and deception." I was deceived," Pemberton stammered. "This woman came to me with these documents. I merely thought the council should be aware." "You thought you could destroy my brother and rule through me," Marcus said with quiet fury. "You thought me weak enough to manipulate, foolish enough to need your guidance. You underestimated us all." "Arrest him," Alexander commanded the guards. "Lord Pemberton will stand trial for treason after the coronation. As for his accomplice," he looked at the false Lady Crane with disgust, "she can join him in the tower to await judgment." As the guards moved forward, Pemberton made one last desperate attempt. "You need me. The Eastern nobles look to me for leadership. Without my support—" "The Eastern nobles will learn to look elsewhere," Elena interrupted. "Lord Blackwood's eldest son has already expressed interest in taking a more active role in regional governance. Amazing how quickly alliances shift when treachery is exposed." The guards dragged Pemberton and his accomplice from the chamber, their protests echoing through the corridors. The remaining council members sat in stunned silence for a moment before General Morrison began to laugh. A deep, relieved sound. "Well played, Your Highnesses," he said, saluting the three siblings. "Well played indeed." "We cannot take all the credit," Alexander admitted. "Bishop Caldwell's quick thinking saved us. How did you know to send for the Astorian ambassador?" The elderly bishop smiled. "When one has served the crown as long as I have, one develops instincts about deception. Lord Pemberton's sudden certainty, his theatrical timing, it all suggested a hastily constructed plot rather than a genuine discovery. I thought it best to verify through proper channels." "The Church's wisdom guides us all," Marcus said gratefully. "Now, unless there are other surprise revelations, I believe we have a coronation to finalize." Lady Stonehaven cleared her throat. "Actually, Your Highnesses, this incident, while regrettable, has served a purpose. Any doubts about the legitimacy of your joint rule have been exposed as the machinations of a traitor. Lord Pemberton's fall will discourage others who might have challenged your arrangement. Moreover," Lord Ashworth added, "you have shown that you can face threats together, combining your different strengths seamlessly. Prince Alexander's composure, Prince Marcus's strategic thinking, Princess Elena's attention to detail, you have already begun ruling as a united force." "Then let us make it official," General Morrison declared. 2 days hence, Valdoria will see its first joint coronation in 5 centuries. And may God help anyone who tries to challenge it after what we've witnessed today." The council dispersed with renewed energy and purpose. As the siblings left the chamber, Elena felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. They had survived their first real test, but the crown, or crowns, still awaited. The next 2 days passed in a blur of activity. News of Lord Pemberton's treachery spread quickly, turning public opinion firmly in favor of the joint kingship. The Eastern nobles, deprived of their unofficial leader, scrambled to declare their loyalty to the crown. Lord Blackwood himself arrived at the palace to offer his personal guard as additional security for the coronation, a clear sign of his shifted allegiances. On the eve of the coronation, Elena found her brothers on the palace's highest tower, looking out over their kingdom. The city below blazed with festival lights, and the sound of celebration drifted up to them on the night breeze. "Father would be proud," she said softly, joining them at the parapet. "He saw this moment," Alexander agreed. "Planned for it, shaped us for it. Even Pemberton's betrayal might have been something he anticipated. Speaking of father's anticipation, Marcus said, producing a sealed letter from his coat. I found this in his study, addressed to us for the night before our coronation. Shall we? They broke the seal together, and Elena read their father's final words to them as future kings. My sons, if you are reading this, then you have overcome the first challenges and stand ready to take your thrones. Yes, thrones plural. I never doubted you would choose to rule together once you knew the truth. Alexander, you have shown that kingship is not about blood, but about dedication, wisdom, and love for one's people. You are my son in every way that matters, and you will be Valdoria's king in every way that counts. Marcus, you have learned that freedom and responsibility need not be enemies, that one can serve without losing oneself. Your connection to the people, combined with your brother's structure, will create a rule unlike any Valdoria has seen. Elena, my wise daughter, you have been the bridge I knew you would be. Continue to be their anchor, their truth-teller, their reminder that love is stronger than law and family is more than blood. Tomorrow you will kneel as princes and rise as kings. Remember in that moment that power shared is not power diminished, but power multiplied. Rule with justice, lead with compassion, and never forget that you are stronger together than apart. All my love and faith, your father. They stood in silence after Elena finished reading, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Marcus spoke. He really did see everything, didn't he? Not everything, Alexander said thoughtfully. He couldn't have known about Pemberton's specific plot or how we would handle it, but he knew we would face challenges and trusted us to meet them together. And we will, Elena said firmly, tomorrow and all the days after. The coronation day dawned clear and bright, as if nature itself blessed the occasion. The great cathedral of Valdoria had been decorated with banners showing the new royal seal, 2 crowns interlinked, symbolizing unity in rule. The pews filled with nobles, merchants, craftsmen, and commoners alike, all eager to witness history. Elena, in her role as royal herald for the ceremony, watched her brothers process down the aisle side by side. They wore matching robes of deep purple and gold, but subtle differences showed their individual natures. Alexander's military decorations, Marcus's medallion from the merchant guild. They walked in perfect step, having practiced until the synchronization came naturally. The ceremony itself blended tradition with innovation. Ancient words were spoken, but new vows were added. When Archbishop Caldwell asked, "Will you rule with justice and wisdom?" both brothers answered as one. When he asked, "Will you defend this realm from all enemies?" their voices rang out together. The moment of crowning required careful choreography. 2 bishops lifted the 2 crowns simultaneously. As they were lowered onto the brothers' heads, the cathedral bells began to ring. Not the solemn toll of a single coronation, but a joyous cascade celebrating dual kingship. "Rise, King Alexander and King Marcus of Valdoria," the archbishop proclaimed. "Long may you reign." "Long may they reign," the crowd roared back, the plural form no longer strange but natural. The first act of the new kings was to sign a charter formally establishing the structure of their joint rule. They signed simultaneously, their penmanship flowing together on the parchment. Then they turned to their people, standing shoulder to shoulder as equals. The celebration that followed was unlike anything Valdoria had seen. In the great hall, 2 thrones sat side by side for the first feast. The brothers took turns accepting congratulations, sometimes speaking in unison when addressing matters of state. Foreign ambassadors, initially uncertain of protocol, quickly adapted to addressing both kings. Lord Garrett Thorne of Astoria approached with particular warmth. "Your Majesties," he said with a deep bow, My king sends his personal congratulations and an offer of renewed alliance. He is most impressed by your handling of the recent unpleasantness. We are grateful for King Aldwin's assistance in exposing the deception, Alexander replied formally. And we look forward to strengthening the bonds between our kingdoms, Marcus added with genuine warmth. Perhaps beginning with improved trade agreements? The ambassador smiled. I see the merchant's friend has not forgotten his roots despite the crown. I'm authorized to begin such discussions immediately. As the evening progressed, Elena moved through the crowd listening to conversations and gauging reactions. The overwhelming sentiment was approval, even excitement. She overheard one elderly noble tell another, 2 kings means twice the wisdom, but more importantly, it means they'll keep each other honest. No single man should hold absolute power. Near midnight, she found her brothers taking a brief respite on a balcony overlooking the celebration. Their crowns sat on a table beside them, and for a moment they were just her brothers again, tired, overwhelmed, but united. How does it feel? She asked, joining them. Heavy, Marcus admitted, gesturing to his crown. Not just the metal, the weight of what it represents. But bearable when shared, Alexander added, clasping his brother's shoulder. I think Father knew that too. Power is less corrupting when you have someone to check you, to question you, to remind you of your humanity. Speaking of checking and questioning, Elena said with a smile, your first joint council meeting is at dawn. Trade disputes from the eastern provinces, border fortification proposals, and about a dozen other matters requiring royal attention. Both brothers groaned in unison, then laughed at their synchronization. At least we'll face the tedium together, Marcus said philosophically. Though I still say we should alternate who has to wear the ceremonial robes for routine meetings. Absolutely not, Alexander replied with mock severity. Standards must be maintained. As they bickered good-naturedly about protocol and comfort, Elena felt a deep contentment settle over her. They had done it, transformed a potential crisis into a new beginning, turned division into unity, made their father's impossible wish into reality. The kingdom of Valdoria had 2 kings now, brothers bound not just by shared parents but by shared purpose. There would be challenges ahead, certainly, disagreements to navigate, precedents to establish, skeptics to convince. But tonight, with the crown's weight shared between 2 sets of shoulders and the people's joy echoing through the palace, anything seemed possible. As the celebrations continued below, the 3 siblings stood together watching their kingdom welcome its future. In the distance, the first light of dawn was beginning to touch the eastern mountains. A new day for a new kind of reign. Long live the kings, Elena whispered, and felt the truth of it in her bones. Their father's final wish had been granted, but more than that, it had revealed a truth he had always known, that love, trust, and shared purpose could overcome any obstacle, break any precedent, and create something entirely new. The age of the joint kings had begun,